Awesome. Guys, welcome to coming through 100units.com. Thanks for swinging by. We have Glenn Mader with NuView with different people. And so it's kind of interesting. We run across, and he runs self-directed IRAs, and I'm here to learn all about NuView. So Glenn, would you mind giving a quick introduction?
I'll be glad to. I founded NuView Trust about 17 years ago and fundamentally changed my retirement and now basically for the last 17 years, I've been putting forth a custodial platform where everyone else can change their retirement as well.
That's awesome. So you've been doing it for that long? It's incredible.
Hard to believe. I still look like a young man, but you know what's interesting is when I started off this business, I was all about saving for retirement. Now I look at myself in the mirror and I represent people that are retired. So that's a scary thought. I'm not retired yet, though, Joe. So I'm still in it.
Now, from what I hear, you are running full steam ahead with multiple different ventures. I was actually really impressed with some of the people I was talking to.
Oh, we have all sorts of fun, and I have the best job possible because unlike most service providers in the industry, I get to learn from my clients. So they inspire me. Joe, you inspire me for what you do for yourself and also for your clients. So it's interesting. So this could be a two-way street today. I'm going to get to know a little bit about you too, if that's okay.
Oh yeah, I'm pretty open. Whatever you want to know. Would you mind running down a quick, like NuView, what it does and how self-directed IRAs help people?
Sure, I'll be glad to do that. And I'll probably mix in just a little bit of story on how I got started in this business. And I was, just like most people with a retirement, I was in an employer's plan. I worked 13 years at a little company on the West Coast called Lockheed Missiles and Space Company. Perhaps you've heard of it. And that was a lot of fun. And I remember being routed through the HR department and just signing up for all sorts of things. And they said, hey, we have this new 401k program. And by the way, I go so far back that was only 5 years old when I went through there. I said, beats the heck out of me. I'm a 24-year-old college grad. I didn't know what. I said, take 2% of my money and put it away. And then I made a quiet pledge to myself that I would say 50% of every raise or every bonus that I got from the company from there on and put it in the plan. And by the way, Joe, that's a great way to save. It's called a future commitment because you don't have to save much right now. But what you're doing is as you get enriched, what you do is you put a portion of that earnings away. And the nice thing in an employer's plan is you don't get to see it, so you don't spend it. And better than that is your spouse doesn't get to see it and spend it. So it's really nice. And so I saved up a lot of money for 13 years. And I was not getting paid. This was 1993 when I left. I think I left with $130,000 in my IRA. I arm of the trust department at LaSalle Bank in Chicago to do it for me. They charged me about $2,000 to buy my first piece of real estate. But that fundamentally changed my excitement about retirement savings because I always felt I had a chance in real estate, that I could actually understand it with enough good people around me. And that's my entry in. I started the company about 10 years later because I never knew there was a company that did this, only a bank. And so I wanted to start my version of that company, and that's what I did. My thought was a lot of other people still have that desire to own real estate, but they don't have the capital to do it. If they only knew that the capital, it wasn't even so much for the tax benefit of it. It was just that's where the money was. And for many Americans, that's where the money is. It's in your retirement plan. Life catches up to you, and that's the only place you can really save long term. So I was so excited to learn I could save long term and use it in something that I felt like I had a chance, that I wanted to tell all my friends. And I said, hey, I can make a business from this. And that's what it was. One person at a time joined, and now we're up to about $1.4 billion of clients' IRA assets, most of which is dedicated to real estate investing.
Wow. That's amazing. Do you mind running through for the self-directed IRA, you're taking tax-deferred money and using it to invest in real estate. What are the advantages of doing that with real estate, and what are some of the disadvantages of doing that with real estate?
Well, I think the number one advantage is that's where your money tends to be. So you can theoretically talk about all the other mounds of money you don't have and say, well, if I had a lot of money outside my IRA, I might be able to get depreciation, which is something that you can't write off in an IRA, but you can write off outside of an IRA. But most of us don't have equal amounts of money in both. So understanding that I'll go on with this theoretical discussion for your listeners, because you're going to have some that have a lot more outside their IRA. I think that real estate is such a wonderful investment for so many reasons on a personal level. And I don't sell any of it, which is kind of interesting. I know you're in the middle of that commerce, but I'm not. I'm a buyer of it, and I'm a believer in it because all the laws that we have in America are really tied to owning property. And so we get tax write-offs for owning property. We get all sorts of incentives for owning property. We have banks willing to lend us at very low rates at times because it's secured by property. So so much more advantage of owning property that it's kind of an obvious play for me, especially for looking at real estate, because I like cash or retirement, because I love cash flow. And what's the thing you need in retirement? You don't need speculation. You need cash flow. And so with real estate, I feel I can do both. I can speculate on it going up, but also that it spins off. And that's what I really like about it. So as far as the individual advantage, there's always advantages of being in a tax deferred plan because you're not paying taxes. So if you're renting out a property and you're getting income, that none of that income is subject to taxes in that current period because it's in an IRA. So it all gets forestalled until the time that you take it out. And then when you take it out, you pay ordinary income tax, almost like you would W-2 earnings. That's all except one type of account, and that's a Roth IRA. And the Roth IRA is interesting, and they haven't been around forever, but they seem like it now, I guess for the younger viewers and listeners, but they've been around 16 years. And Roths were created because Americans weren't using IRAs enough. And the government, they're not in the business, they don't want to be in the business of taking care of you when you're older, and they know that Social Security is kind of wobbly. So they want you to take care of yourself, and they gave huge tax incentives to do that. So with a Roth IRA, unlike a traditional, you get no tax benefits when you make a contribution. So you pay ordinary income tax, then you put the money in. Well, the beauty of that is once you put the money in, you may not ever have to pay tax on that again. And so having a lifetime of earnings and growth and never have to pay the tax when we harvest is amazing. If you think about a Roth IRA, you're really paying the tax on the seed or the acorn, but you're not having to pay tax on the harvest. And with a traditional IRA, a SEP IRA, a simple IRA, what you do is you put the money in and get the tax benefit of when you make the contribution. The growth is all tax-free, but you're going to have to pay the tax at one time or another. I kind of like the idea of paying the tax up front when it's not worth as much, and then getting the tax savings and not paying the taxes at the end. So it's not just an IRA, it's choosing the right type of IRA. Now, to follow on your question, outside of an IRA, you do get to take depreciation, and you might be able to take some losses against other taxes. You can't get that benefit inside of an IRA.
Okay, so that's one of the big that would be one of the considered disadvantages.
It's not really a disadvantage, it's a missed advantage, I guess I would say, because you're not disadvantaged because you're already investing and getting that cash flow. But I also have protection against taxes in ways in an IRA that I wouldn't if I was just an ordinary taxpayer doing it outside of an IRA.
For most of you, if you could I saw on your website you work mainly with individuals as far as their IRAs are concerned. Like, when you work with individuals, like what do you do to help them? Do you guide them toward investment vehicles, or do you just provide the legal framework to invest?
Well, I think it depends where you are in the journey of understanding this. For your listeners that don't know anything about it, we're really valuable to you because what we do is open all the possibilities of what you can do. So we'll show you and talk to you about it. And part of that education is right here today. You can buy almost any asset in an IRA. The IRS leaves it wide open to you to make all these choices. The reason that you don't tend to hear about it, there's not a lot of economic advantage for Wall Street to let you know this because there's not a conspiracy here. But Wall Street is basically built on buying and selling equities and bond offerings. That's how they make their money. They don't make their money when you buy real estate, notes, tax liens, all of these types of things you can buy inside a self-directed IRA. There's no one marketplace for them. So, as you know, when you buy real estate, you can find, and you can go buy it that way. It can be through MLS. It can be through a commercial brokerage. There's many ways to buy real estate. Where in the stock market, there's very few ways to buy anything from stock. You got to pay market price and go to a broker. And about the top 5 brokers represent about 80% of the market. So it's very limited, very focused. You generally won't find a self-directed IRA company sponsoring a major PGA tournament because the money isn't in there that much. The money is really made by the investors rather than the broker. And I think that that's kind of testimony to where you should be in that pecking order. Should you be funding the broker and their lifestyle and their business, or should you be taking and you keeping all of those returns? So it's just a much different marketplace. And we're here, we provide the custodial platform to allow you to do it. And yes, Joe, we stimulate the ideas. So because you never hear about these anywhere else. And to me, what's the most exciting is our customer success stories and what they do. I learn from them all the time, but it has to be for somebody that wants to take control, because all of the decisions are in their place. And what we are is the custodian.
So you provide the legal framework for them to control their IRA.
We absolutely do that. Mm-hmm.
Is there a number? I guess the other side of that coin would be what is not legal to do under those IRA rules?
Sure, I'll cover them, and they're not really that long a list. It's really 2 categories of things you need to be aware of. One is very easy, and probably none of the listeners are going to want to buy this anyway. But you're not allowed to buy life insurance in your IRA. Well, that may not have been what you thought of, because think about what an IRA is for. It's for you to save money so that in your older years, you'll be able to retire and use the money. Well, what does that have to do with a life insurance policy? That's for your beneficiaries. So Congress said, don't go betting on your own life so that someone else is going to benefit from it. We're not going to allow you to do that. The second part has to do relationships. And the IRS is concerned about backdoor dealing and no arm's length transactions. They want to be able to have a buyer and a seller, basically, that don't know each other, don't have a business relationship when it comes to buying and selling or using the benefits of an IRA. So they're concerned, the first place they look at to see if anything is going wrong is inside the family. So they don't want a mother to be able to, or let's say a son to be able to buy a piece of property in their IRA and then rent it out to their mother who's living in it. Because they said the rents would never be right. And we don't want to go down the rabbit hole and saying, yes, it was fair. And I got 3 people's opinion, so I didn't give my mother an unfair deal. Say better, there's certain people that you're so physically close to or emotionally tied to that we would rather not allow it at all. So what they did is they put aside certain family members. They call them disqualified parties. So it's your parents and your grandparents, your children and your grandchildren, and then your spouses and probably your ex-spouses, although who would want to deal with them anyway, But the point is that, so they're concerned about that. So you can't buy and sell with those individuals. And by the way, you can't do it with yourself. So you can't sell something you currently own into your IRA. So you are like the number 1 disqualified parties. So for families, the people I didn't mention are brothers and sisters, uncles and aunts, nieces and nephews. They're not expressly prohibited. But as your friendly custodian, I would suggest you stay away, because they're probably likely you're not going to be able to do arm's length deals with them either. The only way you do an arm's length deal with a brother is if you really dislike them, right? Then there would be a war and that would be fire, right? But so the IRS says, I don't want to transfer anything that we're growing for the benefit of your retirement plan, and you skim off the top or you somehow devalue that. So the other aspect of that is, no personal use of whatever you put in your IRA. Your IRA is for retirement. It's not for now. So you're not allowed to go buy a beach condo. I mean, this happens all the time in Florida. I get this question all the time because everyone's dream is to own something on the beach. And I don't blame it. I don't blame them. But you can't use that yourself, even if you pay your IRA, et cetera, because don't forget, you are getting a benefit from your IRA early and you're a disqualified party. So that kind of it. I remember the story, Joe. When I was starting this business, I remember all these stories because when I started this business, I was knowledgeable because I was a user, not knowledgeable because I had experience in understanding this business. But I used to get phone calls from Miami. I could tell by the area code, but I could also tell by the New York accent. They must be from Miami if they have a New York accent in some sort of perverse way. And they would call me and say, "Hey, Manny and I are at the beach. We come down here for two months every year, and we want to buy the unit that we're in out of my IRA. I heard you can do it." I said, "Well, what are you trying to get at? What's the purpose?" They said, "Well, the rates keep going up every year. Seems to me that would be good in an IRA." I said, "I absolutely agree with you. Buy the one next door to the one you stay in. It's the same wicker furniture. It's the same view. It's the same thing, but you can't buy the one you're in." And then they go, "Oh." And so the people that are just trying to pull money out won't call me back. The people that really see the benefit of, they'll call me back and set up an account and buy the one next door. Rental units in resorts are wonderful. They're a great way to generate cash, but you're not allowed to stay in them. So anything that's really attractive to you is generally attractive to other people. So that's the purpose of the IRS. Outside of that, you can buy just about anything, Joe. Just about anything.
So in the universe of anything, I also see that you have a setup for professionals or providers, or vendors, I don't know, whatever your terminology is, for how do people get set up to you, I guess, to be able to then, that way individuals can use there to invest with them. Do they have a vetting process you use that you bring people on board, or how do you do that?
Well, first of all, that depends on the structure that they created. Did they create an LLC? What type? That's an SEC question as far as how it's structured, and do you have to be an accredited investor or not an accredited investor? All of those options are available for a self-directed IRA client, a NuView client, to go into. So it won't matter what the structure is. That they can go into those structures. The only structure that can't be is an S corp, and generally people don't set up S corps for that. But any kind of LLC, any kind of C corp, they can all go into. There's no prohibition for that. So we do work with brokers, dealers, RIAs, and sponsors that aggregate investors to go into. For instance, I mean, we have a lot of people that do apartment buildings. I mean, let's face it, not many people can afford to buy that by themselves. So those deals are syndicated and they're bought on, and a lot of our clients will buy into those syndications. If they need to be accredited, they need to be accredited. It has nothing to do with their IRA. And so they're fully able to go on board. So the reason we've actually split our company into two deals with individuals like you and I that wanted to invest their IRA. That's how we started the company. But about 5 years ago, we started getting contacted by a lot of people that syndicate, and they say, "Hey, can you help us?" So we set up a special part of our business that could support their business, which tends to be 25, 30, 40 IRAs going into one type of investment. And what we've noticed in that business is that they always just flip over to the next investment until they get to an age they want to take it out. In other words, they don't tend to invest in private investments and then go back to the public market. And the reason for that is they see the returns hugely different. When you're in Wall Street, you have so many people that are sort of peeling away those profits before you get to them. When you get into the private business, it's pretty apparent. If they want to invest in something that you're doing, you can sit down with them, take them through all the paperwork. They know who the syndicator is, or they know what's going on. They understand the business, and you take the time with the individual. That doesn't happen in Wall Street. Are you kidding me? They go, "There's our sign. You can do all the research you like on the line. You can read all of our 10K reports and our 10Q reports. Go at it and make your own mind up. Don't bother me with this." So you tend to be the private investments you get so much more knowledge about it, and you have so few people that are intermediaries that are taking their cut before yours. I don't know if people don't realize it, how much of their why they're not doing so well in their mutual funds tends to be that about 35% from the top line till the time that they get their cut out is taken out. And that doesn't happen in those kind of remarkable sizes inside alternative investments. It's just not done that way.
Interesting. And do you deal with a lot of syndications? Is that a big portion of your business?
It's a big portion on the institutional side. I mean, it's a large portion on our institutional side. That's growing even faster than our retail side. So we're seeing it. And I think that there's when we started this business, I always thought that people wanted to control every aspect of what they were going to do. So they wanted to be able to determine the price of this and the sales price of this and when we raise rents and who's going to rehab the home and all that. And what's happening over time is there's lots of people that want to self-direct, but they don't want to be involved that much. So through syndication, they don't have to be involved that much. Through a property manager, if they have a single family home, they don't have to be involved as much. And they're happy enough to let somebody in, and for 10% or whatever that is, they basically just sit there and they're passive. They can learn about the investment, but they don't want to be involved every day. And if I'm too busy in my investments, then my work is going to suffer. So we all have to balance that out. There's not crazy people, but there's passionate people, I'll put it that way. They want to go collect the rents. They want to drive up and get the check, and they want to go over and they want to, pick out the color of the tile, all the stuff that I don't care about my rental properties. A lot of people obsess about that, and bless them. Self-direction's for those kind of people, but it's also for people like me who want to take a little more hands-off approach to the market.
And we're talking about real estate, and one of the big drivers or advantages of real estate you hear a lot is leverage. And if you would talk about how leverage plays into a self-directed IRA.
Yeah, I mean, not many people know that they can leverage an IRA, and I certainly didn't know it before I got into the business. I always felt like, the IRS isn't going to allow you to do this. This is your IRA. It has different rules and different regulations, and indeed it does. And I'm sure if I was to ask people that sort of created the laws back in 1974 and 75, those that are still alive, if, did they really think that, did you want people to leverage their IRA? They go, no, you don't, you wouldn't do that. But the laws don't say you can't. So if the laws don't say you can't, it means you can. I mean, that's the beautiful thing about America. You have certain unalienable rights, and that one is to hold on to your money until the IRS says you have to give it to us. And so there's no rules against leverage, except there's taxation against it. So I just got you to understand. And there is one element of it that you can't do, and I just want to make sure that I back up and tell you that. Remember earlier on we said that the IRS had two sort of things they were concerned about. They said, number one, not buying life insurance, and that's easy. But also no self-dealing, no arm's length transaction. You're never supposed to benefit your IRA except by making a contribution, right? You're also never able to benefit from an IRA except through a distribution, if you understand that. So it's dollars going in and dollars coming out. There's no intangible benefits. Here's the challenge with you got lending. Almost every lender, certainly bank lenders for the most part, they always want to say two things when they're lending based on property, right? First thing is to securitize the investment. Basically say, okay, I'm going to go register a lien, right? Issue a security, a piece of paper, securitizing that if the terms of the agreement on the payback is not met, right? And so they can foreclose and they can take it back. They don't like doing this. It's painful for them and it's expensive for them. That's why a lot of houses that even are ostensibly owned by the bank, they haven't really foreclosed on them because they don't want to, because they don't want the taxes and all of that kind of stuff. It's ugly to foreclose. So they're more concerned about who's paying it. So they're interested about your credit score. And does he have a good history? Am I likely not to have to foreclose on Joe? Well, here's the challenge is that inside an IRA, Joe, I don't care who you are, you're not allowed to sign or pledge any of your assets for a loan that is backing up by an IRA that's going to benefit your IRA, because otherwise you're illegally benefiting your IRA by your good credit score. So the very fact that you're an upstanding citizen might make you even more attractive to that bank. But you got to push back the bank, say, I can't get that kind of loan. I have to have a non-recourse loan. And we see that a lot of times in commercial, not as much in residential. And where that comes into play is seller financing. That's wonderful, because seller financing doesn't care as much about you. They just want the property back if you don't pay. So what would hurt if I paid 25% down on a vacation home? And this just happened to me, by the way. I paid 20% down on a vacation home, and he would have, I didn't buy this in my IRA, but I guarantee you I could have talked him into taking it without recourse, because he's happy to take the property back and have 20% of that payment in his pocket. You know, that's not a bad deal at all. And generally over time, the longer I go before I stop making payments, the more equity he has in that house, right? Because it's gone up. So he's had the cash, he gets the equity, that's pretty good. So seller financing is absolutely a go for non-recourse lending. There's a couple banks in the US that actually, and if you contact us, I'll let you know who they are. If you ever want to do non-recourse lending from banks, we know of a couple that are willing to do this. So it's possible, but it's harder. And one more thing is if you do finance it, then there's debt financed income that has to be taxed inside your IRA. So I understand when you have leverage, there may be extra taxes you pay inside the IRA for the privilege of going that lending route or that leverage route. And I'll be glad to cover that, but it's a little bit too detailed. Just be aware of it. It is possible. It can't be. You cannot sign for it yourself. You have to find an institution or a seller that's willing to do that for you. And then contact us, and I'll kind of explain to you based on the deal what the cost might be additionally to do it. In almost every case, if you can't do this deal without financing and without your IRA, and you expect it to go up, or it's spitting out revenue, it's always better to do it and pay the tax. It will not kill the deal, but you just need to be aware of it for your calculations on return.
And I saw we were doing IRAs. What about HSAs or ESAs or the other alphabet soup of tax deferred accounts?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And I love the fact that you can use your HSA, especially health savings account. They're not available to everybody. They're only available to someone who has a high deductible health care plan. And I think high deductible means somewhere around $2,000 a year on the individual and $4,000 a year in family. You can double check my numbers, but it's in that range. What you're able to do, this was done in the last Bush administration, and it was all around savings again, and a lot of stuff going on about the Obama health care and all this kind of stuff. And with all looking at all that, they said, well, what about the health care that employers pay for generally? What about this old-fashioned idea where you pay a lot of money every month, you know, the employee pays some and the employer pays some, and then you walk into the doctor's office for $20 and they cover the rest. And the idea was, hey, what if we put together insurance policy that put more of that first dollar in burden on the individual, right? So maybe they'll take care of themselves better, right? They won't run into the hospital emergency room for every time they get the sniffles. We'll make them more responsible, but we will reward them with lower rates. But also, we're going to give them a special savings account to give them an extra reward. And here's how it works. We're going to use our tax code to benefit them. So I can, as a family, I can give, it's almost $7,000 a month I can put into my HSA. By the way, that's even higher than a traditional or Roth IRA I get to put in. So I don't pay taxes and I put it in, which is the best way to save it all. If I ever need to use those, because I have to go in and my insurance is not paying for it, right? I got to pay for the first $2,000, $3,000, $4,000. I can actually pull that money back out, pay that, and I pay it without taxes. So understand that all that whatever I've saved is all without taxes because I used it for qualified medical expenses. That's beautiful. But let me tell you the secret. It's always funny because a lot of times what you'll find in all of these programs, the real power isn't in what they say you can do. The power is doing something completely different with it. So Joe, I never, and with my health, I don't know, but I will never spend my HSA. Not for qualified medical expenses. I'm not going to spend it at all. That's going to be a huge advantage, right? Because I'm just going to keep, it's never forced out. So in other words, I can have that money till I'm 90 years old, 95. When am I most likely to get sick? At 70 or at 90? Well, at 90. So let me keep growing and growing and growing and growing and growing. And by the way, if I ever need to take it out after the age of 65, I can take it out and just pay ordinary income tax on it. So after 65, it's saying keep it in for 65. You have to pay 10% penalty early if you don't. Don't use it as a casual saving vehicle. Use it as a long-term vehicle. Because Joe, all of the things we've talked about, real estate, notes, tax liens, structured settlements, joint ventures, all the wonderful things you can use in the private sector, you can do with your HSA, but better yet, you can partner with your IRA to do it. Because a lot of times people are just getting this message in HSA, they don't have as much money in it. I've got like, I don't know, $150,000 in my HSA. And I do all sorts of kind of cool, I use that account to do all sorts of funky things like business startups. People want to borrow money. They want to borrow $20,000 and they'll give me 15%. I say, sure. You got a boat? Okay, I want the I want the lien on the boat, and you can, here's $15,000. Pay me back in 6 months. I don't care. I do all those kind of deals out of my HSA. So there's always something going on, but I just keep building it up and up and up and up. And because I never want to where you're going and what the trajectory is. And what many people don't understand, I was talking to somebody in my office about this today, is a lot of people base their wealth on their income statement. How much money do I make every year? You know, I'm in advertising, or I'm on the news and I get paid a lot of money. I'm an internet, what do you call them? Influencer, whatever they do. But I make a lot of money, and and they live life large. And I said, what's your balance sheet look like? Because it's your balance sheet that's wealth. Your income statement says, I have the possibility of becoming wealthy. But when it's on the income statement, it says, I've realized wealth. Because your income statement is just your assets minus your liabilities. And a lot of times in real estate, you can be pretty poor, appear to be pretty poor and driving a ratty car, but have $1 million of net worth. And that's where I want to be. And that's where our clients want to be. And I think that's where a lot of your clients want to be. They don't want to get into multifamily because they're going to make a lot of money tomorrow. It's basically going to put them on a path. Of course, they're going to get cash flow, and of course, but it's all about stacking up those coins into a place where it's incredible wealth. And my biggest blessing of the 17 years in the business is not what I've made, it's the knowledge that I've gained. And that's the true currency. You act on that knowledge and you surround yourself with people that are smarter than yourself. And for me, that's a pretty easy thing to do. But I will tell you, that's what's changed my life, is not so much the profits from the business, but much more about how I've been able to take my P&L and move it and advance my balance sheet.
I saw on your website the Sioux Falls, South Dakota address, and that my grandmother's actually from South Dakota, and we used to go visit when I was a little kid. So that has a special place in my heart. I was curious. I got a 407 phone number. You seem like you're in Longwood, but Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
Well, where would you rather live if you had the choice? And I that's not really fair, because I've got a lot of friends in South Dakota, and I made a lot of friends in the 3 or 4 years that we've actually had our chartered trust company there. You're probably wondering why that is. Well, South Dakota is an incredible state as far as trust company charters, and that's what I really like. America is a federal system, which means that we're a collection of states, and that states have a lot of power on how they organize and structure their organizational entities. So for instance, if you ever talk to anyone about forming an LLC, you'll soon realize that it won't matter what state that you go to, meaning you can run a company in Florida and be chartered anywhere. So you pick the state that Dakota really matches our business. Their entire state charter and the laws are very attractive to trust companies because they understand it. If you'll take a look at most of the larger credit cards and trust company businesses, even out of the New York banks, they're all headquartered in South Dakota. South Dakota was very smart about this, largely agricultural based, right? But they needed workers and they needed to generate something, and they wanted to generate this business because it's climate safe, right? It's not big, heavy smokestack industries. It's people that are dealing with banking. So they've made their charters very attractive to businesses such as ours. And so that's why we decided to charter there. The advantage that we have is earlier on, we were a custodian, but we did it through another bank that we were not owners of and charter members of. When you do that, we don't have a direct line of audit. Now we're directly audited. We just finished our very first audit by the South Dakota banking authorities, and that went very well. I'm not allowed to tell you how well because that's part of the bank secrecy. But we're also every year we're audited for our entity on our own. So NuView IRA is audited and NuView Trust is audited. So it gives our clients a sense that they're entrusting us with a lot of money. So we make sure that we're squared up. We balance our books every night, and then we have the auditors come in and do it. So if there's any problems or any issues for our clients, they can actually go to the banking regulators in South Dakota. Hopefully they'll call us first if they have an issue. But I think it gives people a really good sense that we know what we're doing and that we have proper oversight over what we do every day.
The final thing that really caught my eye was the Chair the Love and the Wheelchair Foundation. So if you mind explaining what your affiliation there is and why you're so passionate about it?
Oh my goodness. Thanks so much for asking about that, because, that's not directly aligned with our business, right? And I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about this. About 10, 11 years ago, I was invited by a friend. He said, hey, Mr. Ken Behring is going to Mexico and there's an extra seat on his plane. Well, Ken Behring was the owner of the Seattle Seahawks. He lives in Northern California, or did, and he built Tamarack, Florida, so an entire community, a wonderful life, just a self-made guy. And evidently later on in his life, in his 70s, he learned about this group that was giving away wheelchairs, and he got to know more about it. He created his own charity called the Wheelchair Foundation. And he started putting these on his plane. He had like a DC-10, or like, it was this massive thing. I had never, maybe a 170, or 172. But so going on his plane was amazing. But the biggest thing is we got off and of course, when you're on a private plane, you don't have to go through security. You don't have to go through customs. It's really cool. But we took a container load of wheelchairs and delivered them into Mexico City. And we were there with the First Lady. But outside of all the pomp and circumstance of all the political figures, what was really exciting was meeting the people and seeing them lined up and babies being held and people, dragging themselves on the ground. And I learned more about this, and I said, I want to be part of this because I love to run around and be athletic as much as I can be. And I love hiking and I love doing all those things. And these people weren't able to actually move from one side of the room to another. And I said, I got to help. So bit by bit, I started doing more and more with that particular charity until I think about 3.5 years ago, we chartered our own called Chair the Love. I like the kind of the irony of that, right? It's an interesting name. And now what we do is every year we'll go on 3 or 4 distributions in various countries all over. We seek donations, we make donations, we match it. We just try to give the joy of giving to everybody, and then the joy of actually being able to get on a plane and go distribute these. And it's amazing, amazing. Not everyone can go on the plane, and today not everybody wants to go on a plane. But I've been all over the world on this, and I love traveling, and it's really strange. Once I've been involved in changing people's lives, by the way, that's $150 buys a wheelchair and changes an entire family's life. And having watched all of that stuff, it's hard for me to travel now on vacation without saying, okay, I want to take wheelchairs with me, because it's traveling with a purpose. And so we get to have fun, and we go to we go to Machu Picchu and we go to the Rainbow Mountain and we do all these things in Peru. We were just there last week or last year. We do all of that, but that's after we do the distributions. And so you talk about the best kind of place to go as a community and meeting people and meeting like-minded people. I've made so many friends and contacts. There's no way that I could ever pay enough in that wouldn't make up for all the stuff I got back in that. And so we help people. We love to include other people in our tribe. We love to invite our clients to come and be part of it. And it's been a real joy. And hopefully, Joe, you're going to be able to come with us. I'd love to have you come on us our trip. We actually have we have 2 containers because of coronavirus. We got caught. So we have actually 2 containers, one in Guadalajara, Mexico, which is a gorgeous part of Mexico. And then in Costa Rica, we have another one. So you and your viewers are invited to go with us on these trips. And by the way, there's no cost to go on these trips outside of just paying for your airfare and your stuff. We get taken around by local Rotarians and local people. Go home and raise more money for wheelchairs. So that's really what it's all about.
Are there any closing things you'd want to make sure that people know about you and NuView and your team?
Well, just use this as a resource first. I mean, I am interested for people to open the accounts. I'm just really interested for you to taste the freedom of self-direction. Your money's locked away from you, and you can actually, the amount of returns and what you can do is amazing. And don't be distraught that you say, well, I don't know that much, or I'm not ready. Just be part of our community. Just be part of Joe's community. And I think what you're going to find is you're going to find enough people that are successful at it that are going to show you the way, that are going to partner with you, or just take you by the hand and say, listen, I don't want anything from you. Just do some of the things that I do. I think the whole world is better off if we encourage each other, not flaunt what we have, but show people how they can have what we have and a lot more. If they would just make those moves. We're scared of the unknown. And for some reason, people are scared to come into the side of private investing. But when you really understand the opportunities it gives you, I think you'll run, not walk to that opportunity. But it takes time. It's a time that we're willing to sit down with you and talk to you, probably on the phone now or over the web. We love to be able to Zoom and FaceTime our clients. But it's just use as a resource. Call us, say, I didn't get that. You went too fast. You didn't go deep enough. This is a message for everybody, but individually, everybody has a different way of looking at it. So we're willing to help anywhere. We have a free guide that all they have to do is go to NuViewTrust.com and ask for our 16-page guide, and we'll send that to you. That'll be something that you can take and view at your leisure and then say, that interests me. Maybe not that, but that interests me. And just the last thing I leave you with, one way to get into this business that may not be as risky as you think this is simply partner with somebody. Find someone that knows a lot about doing something. If you're going to go into apartments, probably not good to do it first time on your own, but go own 10% of something or 1% of something, and then just watch that. And over the course of 1 or 2 years, you're going to say, I can get into that a little bit differently. Here's what I can do. You can always add to that over time. So do not think about this self-direction as something, I got to take my IRA, take it out of the market and move it over to NuView and start doing all this crazy stuff. You can do a little bit at a time, and that's what I would do. With any kind of investment, this is your future. You need to be very, very careful with what you're going to do. But I would start to trust yourself a little bit more than Wall Street, because nobody is sitting there worrying about your money. They're worried about theirs. And it's time you took over and
That's some great parting words. I like that. That could be your slogan right there. It's time for you to worry about your own money. I like that. That's really good.
Well, I don't know. There's a lot of slogans, but
there's a lot of slogans. Well, thank you for taking some time to talk to us. I really appreciate it. And if anybody wants to check you out, you're at NuViewTrust.com, and they can get your free white paper, and your website is full of worthwhile information in the universe. So I really appreciate it. It was a quick education when I was going through it.
Well, Joe, thanks so much for the time, and thank you for everything that you do about pushing the knowledge about multifamily. It's an amazing opportunity. So I also would would have them, they can go to you, they can go to us. We're a team from a standpoint of we provide access to your money. How you spend it, go to experts like Joe, and they'll help you as well.
That's awesome. Thank you.
All the best.
Appreciate it. Thanks. Yeah, thanks for the help. I really appreciate it. And seriously, like I had several people tell me that you were really good. It like spoke highly of you and your team, like Ken Paulsonelli and Greg Bond. Like I had a number of people tell me what a good job y'all do.
Well, I can't wait to spend more time with you and your company and start to see the successes coming out of that too.
Okay, awesome. Thanks. I appreciate it.